get this podcast started. So let's start with rookie minicamp. Jeremy just teased it. We have so many notes to talk about. I want to start with a little bit of the hype because I don't think we really talked about him much during the draft, even, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Because he just got lost on that shuffle on day 2 where all the great players were coming, Brian Branch, Hendon Hooker. And maybe it's the reluctance of Lions fans to grasp on to another tight end, but you have here, let me read this verbatim from the show notes. Sam Laporta, more like damn Lamore of that. First off, terrible, 3 out of 10, but we'll roll with it.
For the record, not my work.
Was that you, Ryan?
It was me, so it's okay. It's okay.
All right, I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you then.
I thought that's where we workshop stuff. Kind of like rookie minicamp. It's where they're workshopping
it's also,
rookies,
it's also,
you know?
Yeah, it's also like rookie minicamp where we kind of haze you.
That's fair. I can take it.
But Laporta, Jeremy, Ryan, like, I was reading some of the notes coming out of there. I'm like, okay, this is the one who's really balling out.
Yeah, listen, I think I said it a couple times on this podcast. The more and more I dug into this guy's tape, the more and more excited I got about him, and that did not slow down at all with rookie minicamp. The guy was catching passes all over the place, and granted, he's going, like, we always have to remind ourselves when we're talking rookie minicamp, they're mostly going up against undrafted guys, right? There's about 50 guys out there, 8 of them were drafted, and when we went on Saturday, only 5 of them were drafted because 3 of them were on the sidelines. So throwing that disclaimer out first, but Laporta was, I mean, they didn't have an answer for him. He was open like 7-Eleven, right? Like, always open, didn't matter what kind of route he was running. The one thing I will say that I was interested in and maybe slightly disappointed with was it didn't seem like their use of him was that varied. Like, Sam Laporta is kind of being billed as this guy. He can be an outside receiver. He can be in the backfield. He can be in line. He can be in the slot. Mostly just in line and a little bit in the slot for him, which is fine. Rookie minicamp, you're probably not going to overwhelm the dude. So maybe not surprising, but maybe a little bit disappointed. But either way, like, he was shifty. The athleticism to me was what really stuck out. And it's something that we've all built him. Like, his RAS score is ridiculous. He's super fast. When he's out there, he's making DBs miss in college when, you know, normally they match up favorably against linebackers. So, yeah, definitely the most impressive guy at rookie minicamp, and I look forward to seeing how he matches up against some vets next week during OTAs.
I thought the thing that you said at the top, Jeremy, not specifically about Laporta, but like how to like temper expectations when it comes to rookie minicamp. Remember the conversations we were having about James Houston after rookie minicamp?
Yeah.
He doesn't get it. Like, Malcolm Rodriguez is the one who was like catching on, like, so quick to, you know, do this, that, and the other thing. And then look where we are by the end of the year. So rookie minicamp's fun though, right? Because it's like you have all these shiny new toys and you want to see them out on the field, and it's awesome that Laporta could do it. The one thing that I took away from Laporta was maybe the same thing that Nick Baumgardner took away, and it was he was doing it without gloves and then also doing it with gloves. And like, I just love the idea of the throwback tight end who like just has like taped wrists and like maybe some finger tape, but like, I love it. I mean, that's one of the more exciting picks I think that the Lions made, and one that, as Chris mentioned, kind of flew under the radar a little bit, like, or maybe not flew under the radar, but kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, because it's a crazy weekend, right? So like, of all the crazy storylines, them taking a tight end in round 2 is just like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he was the first one off the list, and we're just kind of like, oh, whatever. And then Brian Branch, wow, that's cool. Hendon Hooker, wow. Okay, more on Hendon Hooker in a second. But thing I like from Laporta is you did mention it's a lot of undrafted guys they're going up against, but Laporta didn't mind also going up against Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
And those two are, it was, I mean, granted, it was mostly, I think, was it a special teams drill, Jeremy,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken? So, like, Laporta beat Campbell at least on one rep, but they're already competing pretty hard out there. And what was it? Laporta did the dead leg move. Yeah. I think I remember from Eric's notes. And this will be fun. This will be fun. This is kind of fun to watch these two kind of sharpen iron on each other.
I mean, you could definitely tell those two have practiced plenty of times together. And really, one of the cool things about Laporta too is he's also like a very friendly guy. I suggest if you haven't already, go back and watch the media session with him, our first kind of not our first media session, but our first one coming off the field and stuff. And he was very playful and so. I mean, he flashed too. Like, it wasn't just dead legging Jack Campbell. It was as he ran by him, waving back at him, which is just like, oh, you got some, like,
Yeah,
probably
these guys
doesn't
have been
do
doing
that
this for
against
few
a
years.
vet. Probably just does that against your college buddy. But very fun guy. I do want to talk about Jack Campbell really quickly because Ryan brought up James Houston, and it kind of brought back flashbacks to that previous rookie minicamp, watching James Houston, watching Malcolm Rodriguez. Malcolm Rodriguez basically did everything right. We didn't see Kelvin Sheppard talk to him at all. James Houston had Kelvin Sheppard in his ear the entire time. I was a little surprised, though. Jack Campbell kind of had Kelvin Sheppard's ear as well. Like, Sheppard was, and I don't necessarily think this is, Jack Campbell isn't getting it. Jack Campbell needs a ton of development. I think it's more like Kelvin Sheppard wants his hands on this guy because he is that important to what they're going to do. And so, I mean, yeah, he did make some mistakes here and there. He did get burned by a couple times by Sam Laporta on the special teams drill, which is also, I should say, very much developed for the guy with the football in his hands to win. It's basically a one-on-one. They do it all the time in training camp, a one-on-one running at each other, try to quote unquote tackle. There's obviously no contact, so they're not actually tackling. It's more like two in touch. But open field Jack Campbell versus, Sam Laporta versus anybody. Sam Laporta is going to win that a lot of times.
That's fair.
Yeah. All right, hold up a second. We're going to throw in, we're going to hit the button right now. We're going to go talking Hooker. We really need to find a way to put that on the stream itself, just because I feel like people deserve that.
I'll get a button on my stream deck so that we fire it up.
Somehow Hooker didn't even practice that much here, Jeremy, and yet already he's still taking headlines.
I really didn't want to do it, Chris, because I know the reputation that some of us at Pride of Detroit have with Jared Goff and Hendon Hooker and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, he looked like he was the guy that was quarterbacking all practice, even though he wasn't. Like, he couldn't practice. He's obviously not doing anything.
Explain that. What does that mean, though? What does that mean that it looks like he's the quarterback, but he's not even on the field?
I mean, he takes command of everything. He's dapping up everybody. He's going around being involved in it, like every huddle, he's there. He's making sure guys walking off who make a play, slaps him on the helmet. Like, he's that guy. That he has that innate ability, and that's one of the first things Brad Holmes said he noticed about him is, like, after he scored a touchdown, he didn't go back and talk to the offensive coordinator. He didn't go sit down and grab a Gatorade. He stood there and waited for the extra point team to come off the field and dap them up. And so, just that command is like it's striking. Like, I don't want to say like Jared Goff doesn't necessarily have that gene in him, but at the same time, it's different. Like, he's almost a cheerleader out there, and maybe because you're not doing any other work, it affords you that opportunity to do some of that stuff. But I mean, you can see why he was so well liked at Tennessee. You can see why the Lions fell in love with him so much. I think he's going to be someone who is a leader in that locker room, whether he's a starter or not. So it's just interesting to see a guy stand out so much when he's not practicing.
And probably stand out too, right, for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
He's doing everything he should be right now.
Yeah, especially when we were coming off, the draft last year, and it was JMO's expressionless, things that were being over scrutinized and whatnot. It's nice to have somebody here who's showing that they're pretty exuberant and jacked up about being here. So that's good news too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, I feel like we dug too much into the JMO thing, but I think for someone who wants to prove you want to be the leader of this team at some point in your career, if you want a gun for that job, it helps to at least, I hate to make this about, being at work or whatever, but it is all about like knowing your team and having that hand in the pie. That's what we see from all the really great quarterbacks from the past. It's always about knowing your whole team and having close relationships with everyone.
And the last thing I'll say on Hooker is he told a story about his draft night, which I thought was really interesting and also a very encouraging sign, is that James Mitchell reached out to him right after he drafted. The two played at Virginia Tech for a while. And he just sent him his congratulations, and Hendon was like, send me the formations. Send me the offensive formations. And
He wants to go. He wants to go.
and Mitchell's like, oh, I'm out on a boat or something. I can't do that right now. So Mitchell hurries back 2 hours later, sends him all the formations, and Hooker's like, that's what I needed. Like, everything stems from the formation, the scheme, the players that I'm expected to be aware, like all that stuff. He needed that stuff that night so he can get going. And you love to hear it.
On the night he's drafted.
Yeah.
Kind of bummed that he didn't like chastise James Mitchell for not knowing it off the top of his head.
He wanted
like who cares if you're on a boat? Describe it to me. I'll draw it. I got a pencil and a piece of paper.
I've got a mind. Describe it from your mind castle. Let me know. Well, there was, so I think the person I wanted to maybe see most from rookie minicamp was Jahmyr Gibbs, right. But not really there. Jeremy, can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so Ray Agnew, the assistant GM, had a press conference right beforehand and basically let us know he wasn't going to be out there practicing because he tweaked something. I think we ended up learning it was an ankle injury, which is disappointing because I think everyone wanted to just see that speed on the field, right? And so, yeah, he eventually showed up to the practice, just obviously not participating, so just hanging around. Mm-hmm. He talked to the media and said it's not a big deal. They're just being precautious. I'll be fine. So there's no reason to get upset or worried at this point. I will say that I've been checking the photo galleries in all the practices since, and I haven't seen him out there yet. So it's possible he might not be there to start OTAs. But again, this is all being very precautionary. I can't imagine he'll miss any significant time when training camp comes, if any. I don't imagine he'll miss any time unless something else pops up. So it's disappointing. It's not. People are going to freak out because that's just. By nature, we're Lions fans. We tend to go worst case scenario at this point.
But it's tweaking something. It's not
right.
Like tearing an ACL.
An ankle tweak for a running back is called like a Tuesday. That's just how it is. So I don't think we're.
No, but I'm just not getting where these concerns are coming from at all. Like it's a completely different category.
The history of Lions and running back injuries is where it's coming from. I'm sure.
I guess. I feel like we're internalizing something here, though.
Oh, 100%.
Oh yeah, didn't Michaela Shore tear his Achilles like on the first day camp?
Something like that.
It was something like that. Yeah, I mean,
it'll be okay. It'll be okay, everybody. Don't worry about it.
It didn't even hit my radar, but I mean, maybe that's because I'm just not a Lions fan or whatever.
Football in May. Not a lot of Super Bowls were won in May.
Any UDFAs we could probably talk about, Jeremy?
Well, let's talk about
Ibrahim?
the guy who, let's talk about Ibrahim, the guy who had to literally take every running back snap over the weekend because they didn't have
of Jahmyr Gibbs' injury, right? Yeah.
I guess every day on, I should say Saturday and Sunday, because it is worth. Gibbs did practice on Friday. That's where he suffered his. We just didn't get to see him. So I mean, Ibrahim, like, poor guy out there, like he gave it his all. I was surprised by how good a hands he had, but you could also tell by the end of that practice he was gassed. And that's of a guy who, carried the football a lot at Minnesota. So, I don't think there's anything necessarily notable to say about his performance other than, kudos to him for being able to do that for about 90 minutes, 2 hours straight.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And then we should probably talk a little bit about Dylan Drummond, the Eastern Michigan receiver, who was there for a tryout. The Lions signed him today. He and I can't remember the other wide receiver undrafted tryout that was there. They both kind of popped. And Dylan Drummond, he's about 6 foot 190 something. Not that fast, but he was given a lot. It really seemed like the Lions secondary was having a lot of trouble, and so Dylan Drummond had a solid day and obviously earned his way onto the roster. I don't know if he has a legit shot at making the 53 at this point. There's the depth at wide receiver is very weird now that obviously you're not going to have J-Mo. Obviously you lose Quintus Cephas, Stanley Berryhill. There might be a spot open for like the wide receiver 5 or 6 position.
Yeah, I almost feel like he's got to beat out Antoine Green for that, which I mean, you're beating out a 7th rounder. It's not too hard.
And Green looked decent too. He about halfway through the practice he came up a little gimpy, but then he finished out practice. So I think that's just it'll be an interesting battle to watch. And then the last guy to talk about is Starling Thomas, the corner. He was that one-on-one drill on the special teams one that we were just talking about with Jack Campbell and Sam Laporta. He won every single rep, whether he was ball in his hands or the guy that was quote unquote tackling. Speed, crazy speed, and listen, a guy like that. I know Eric has been on him from the beginning. The way he's going to make the roster is through special teams, and the Lions just so happened to lose a special teamer or two on the defensive side of the ball, whether you're talking about CJ Moore or some of the linebackers they got. So that was he did everything he needed to do to start on the right foot here in Detroit and really give himself an opportunity to make the roster.